Well, I want to now move us on to ones that are for sure required reading. And that is a sequence of issues. It is 3 issues that starts with one that's called, prophetically, Bruce Wayne, Rest in Peace, which clearly Grant Morrison has drawn some inspiration from. So this is a 3-issue story. I don't know that we're going to go right along the issue lines. It's in Batman 242, 243, and 244 from June to September of 1972. And I'll give some details, and I'll let you two take away what you want to take away. So Batman fakes Bruce Wayne's death because he's on a multi-month-long campaign to finally figure out what is going on with Ra's al Ghul, effectively. And so he thinks he's going to recruit this mobster, but inadvertently the mobster gets killed. He recruits a doctor, and then he inadvertently recruits Ling, a former servant of Ra's al Ghul, by making Ling beholden to Batman for saving his life. And then they also make friends with Olympic skier Molly Post, who's my favorite person to ever knock out Batman with a pair of skis. And ultimately, they are trying to track down Ra's al Ghul, and we get the first glimpse of him emerging from a Lazarus Pit. So this is a hugely important story, even though some of it is totally bonkers. And it also has Robin's impersonation, which I'll get back to when it's my turn. Harry, what do you think about this original Bruce Wayne, Rest in Peace?
So, I mean, these 3 issues are delightful, like in every single way. This is probably my favorite stuff that we read. But, I mean, this was the first appearance for me, and of the character of Matches Malone, who is another fun character who shows up throughout Batman's history, especially in Morrison's. And I guess I didn't I always thought that Matches Malone was like a fake character that Bruce Wayne designed to play, like when he wants to get into Gotham's underworld. I didn't realize he was actually a human being who Batman watches get shot and is like, okay, I will now use this man's face for me and many of my friends to impersonate. It's a little grim, but no, the beginning is interesting. It's fun, and I love the assembling of this team with the Doctor and Ling, and just seeing them all come together. It is the oddest little crew that Batman has had, and that's saying a lot. But I'm smiling big right now because that's what I was doing when I was reading the book. It's so freaking fun. I'm going to use that word a lot during this.
Fariha, what did you think about this Bruce Wayne RIP and the introduction of the Lazarus Pit?
I mean, it was like a lot. I wasn't quite sure why a lot of those things were happening, because why was he why was he like fake killing and stuff? Like, you know that Raz will figure that out. He will figure it out. He's not like your other villain, so he'll figure it out.
But isn't it more so that Gotham's not like, where's Bruce Wayne, while Batman's on this months-long campaign that actually just takes a day? Like,
but you can just say that I'm a millionaire, suckers, whatever. I'm gonna leave. I don't know. I mean, did people cared about millionaires or billionaires now back then? Like, where they were? Like,
it's not like you missed them on Twitter in 1972.
Right, exactly. So the thing is, I didn't quite realize that, but I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. He's going with all of this. And then there was like, I love that Dr. Blaine, right? His name is Blaine. Dr. Blaine. Yeah, Blaine kept on saying, "Why am I here? This is not my expertise."
I'm not into
but
this.
But the thing is, like, I couldn't figure out what his actual expertise is, because he's a doctor, but he's also a scientist, but he's also like, there because in case some sciencey stuff happens, so he will need it. So it just like a lot. And then Molly Post, she just shows up out of
my
nowhere.
new favorite character, Molly Post. Yes,
Molly Post. Yeah, so, but the thing is, like, even on that, like, Batman has, like, this inner, like, in a monologue or, like, inner struggles, like, I can't lose to a woman. Like, it's like, she's an Olympic skier. It's okay if you're not being able to keep up with, just because it's a woman. Like, and then those kind of wording, I'm like, ugh, please.
He's, like, so twisted about it, too. But But it's like, it's one of the few times that he interacts with a woman in this whole run that's not Talia or that one maid for, like, a second. And it's just really interesting because it's so absent otherwise, and it's all focused on Talia to be like, oh, here's Batman interacting with a woman, and he's intensely jealous that she's better at something than him.
And the thing is, like, this is something that I'm actually beginning to realize, that because other than modern day detective comics, even modern day Batman actually is devoid of all women. Like, other than Catwoman or Talia, I don't think, like, or Harley Quinn when she shows up. I'm like, that's why they keep on bringing up Harley Quinn, because there is no other women that actually shows up in his run. Because even here, I was actually counting, I'm like, okay, how many? Like, and it's just Tony too, as you
Well, and I
pointed
also
out.
think that's why they've introduced characters like Renee Montoya, so that there's
Oh,
more
yeah.
like incidental supporting women who maybe go on and become popular and get their own books, because like his inner circle always feels like inevitably is Commissioner Gordon, Alfred, and a male Robin. Like you know, and then all most of the villains are men, majority, other than Catwoman and Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. So it kind of just feels like they like try to insert them where they can. But I definitely was struck is in these 70s comics of like there is not a single named female character in these stories anyway. Also, you have to think that in the 70s, like they don't want to distract us from Talia effectively. So they're like, well, Talia's the lady in these stories. Like, okay. Thanks.
Between that and like whenever Talia hits on him and he's just being like, I don't want to deal with this right now, I'm Batman. Like the sexual like undertones and weird like readings of that. Like Batman's an interesting guy. He's got a lot going on.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, there used to be a time where I'm like, oh, there is no female Robin, except for Dark Knight Returns, people. I know, I have read it. There is a female Robin there. But now, in retrospect, I'm like, yeah, it's a better reason. Because it just, the optics of it is just not good. Like,
There's a lot
otherwise.
happening.
Yeah.
Well,
otherwise
speaking
it's
of a
not
lot
good.
happening, we have not even touched on everything that has happened in these stories yet. So let me just throw out a few other things. At one point, Batman needs to be himself, so he can't impersonate himself and matches Malone. So he puts Dick Grayson in an inflatable bodysuit so that he's big enough to impersonate Matches Malone, which I just thought was, and Dick is so excited. There's definitely this dynamic where Dick is in college, and by the way, those backups were largely written by Mike Friedrich. And so there's this thing where like he's kind of yearning for Batman a little. They cross over a few times in the intermediate issues that are not the Ra's al Ghul stuff, which are just not Robin stories. But like you just see him being like, I know I'm in college, but I can still help. And Bruce being like, no, thank you, Dick. So that struck me. Also, Talia is serving some fashion when they first track her down in the Alps in this like royal purple big sleeved like dressing
She
gown.
looks good.
Yeah, cute, gorgeous. And then let it not be lost that we haven't talked about the end of this plot yet, which Batman basically loses. He doesn't ski fast enough. The skier uses one of the somebody uses a ski pole as a lance, but then it gets reflected back and impales this Molly. So Batman has to protect Molly. Ra's al Ghul and Talia gets away. Batman is distraught, and he figures out where they are in some unnamed desert somewhere because he finds a camel bridle with unusual beadwork just lying around in the base in the Swiss Alps, which is how Batman finally tracks them down to have a head-to-head duel with Ra's al Ghul in the desert and apprehend him, leaving Talia dry, hot, and alone.
I want to quickly say before we just totally skip past, so Batman does continue his long dynamic with Ubu in this, where in the first
Harry's Ubu
fight,
corner.
Yes, in the first fight he calls him Fatso, which seems a little rude. And then there's a rematch where Batman kicks him in the jaw and thinks to himself, he'll sleep the sleep of the fat, ugly, and stupid.
Yes! I screenshotted that because I'm like, this is one of the best Batman panels of all time.
I want more Batman comics where not only is he punching people, he's talking trash while he's doing it.
I had to check which direction the speech bubble was in. Because I'm like, oh my god. Like, it's not just enough. Because I genuinely thought it was Ubu saying that. But, it's like, okay, that doesn't make sense. So then I looked and I'm like, oh my god, he's saying that. I mean, it's just not enough that he's maiming and leaving these people for dead.
Yes.
Because even though he's not killing them, he's maiming them and
it's
he's leaving them for dead. But he's also trash talking about them being fat.
Shit.
I was like,
Batman's
and then,
a jerk.
This is the one.
He is a jerk.
So is this the one where he is like having a fight in the desert wearing like just his just his
oh
head
my god!
thing,
Well, we need to talk about this.
That is like one of my favorite thing ever. Like, I'm like, why not just take that off? It's really hot there. It's really hot.
Okay, all know
so number
who you
one,
are already.
Exactly.
Do you think anyone knows? It's number one. Batman on skis, pretty good. Batman in the desert, hairy chest, just as Cal, very good. I think this is all great.
And then, I have a feeling like, because now that I've read like 2 different 70s comic with like different shades of hair and men, I'm like, there's something to it. We don't appreciate hair on men's chest anymore.
Well,
so you're saying this is acceptable hairy chest man, whereas Wolverine, you are not into seeing Wolverine's hairy chest.
Well, Wolverine's all hair. He's
but
just
Bruce's hairy chest
man.
you're into.
Yeah, Bruce, because Bruce and Cyclops kind of had it going on, like, you know, it was just like there was like it was shapely, like, you know, it was like manicured hairy chest.
No, he looks good.
But you know, Wolverine just looked like a hedge.
I want to contribute to this conversation beyond just talking about Ubu, in the sense that this the last issue of these three is actually, and again, going to play out in a big way in Grant Morrison's book, and it's basically kind of positioned there where I thought, and we'll get to it on that episode. There's a situation there that kind of Batman's like retelling, and it almost felt like a retcon. It felt that way, but reading this issue now, there's actually like enough room where Talia kisses him, and he gets like poisoned or drugged and gets up like ready to fight Ra's al Ghul again, and it kind of sets up the Grant Morrison story much.
Did he go to a Lazarus Pit here? The way we see it on panel is Talia, and I'm staring at this even before you started, was Talia crouches over him because, by the way, Batman's been stung by a deadly scorpion during his desert shirtless knife fight with Ra's al Ghul, just so you're following along. 70s comics are amazing. So Talia leans over him, and you can't tell if she's like tipping a vial into his mouth or kissing him, or it's not really, she says a final kiss. And then you see Bruce like unconscious with his tongue hanging out of his mouth, which is a look. And then you see him like get up almost in this like zombie creepy way.
No, and that panel is so good, where he's just like in the moonlight looking like an actual demon. Yeah. It's a great page of Batman.
So there's I think even without knowing Grant Morrison stuff, and I vaguely recollected that because I have read some of Morrison, but I didn't know. I was like, there is missing material here. Like we are not getting this whole story. This narration is not reliable. I do not believe this for a second.
Right. I did kind of thought about it as like something narration not being, but then I'm like, oh, whatever, 70s.
Well, there's enough room here to like expand on it, and Morrison does in a really smart way without it feeling like it's just a hard retcon. And then again, not really a shocker here, but that's the final panel on this page where he bursts in like chest hair aplenty, and Ra's yells, "By the gods, you pursue me past your dying. Are you man or fiend from hell?" One of the best moments in comics, I think. It's so classic and pulpy, and just it feels like something that would be on the cover of like a horror comic. I just love it. It's so good. It's so good.
I think in recent years there's a lot of like comparison of Batman with Devil, like, you know. So I think like it kind of started there, like, you know, like a.
You're gonna like Morrison's. You're gonna like some of Morrison's stuff for sure. Then.
So a final point to close out this discussion. This ends with the first, for sure, definite, full-on consensual kiss between Talia and Bruce, because Bruce is open to it as Talia is asking if she's going to be in prison. But no, he leaves her behind. He has a constant blind spot for her as he carries Ra's al Ghul across the desert to be put somewhere. Here's the thing I want to point out, other than the consensual kiss. Having tried to read all of the stuff that leads up to this, did he actually learn the thing that he said he wanted to learn? Like he faked the death of Bruce Wayne. I mean, he captured Ra's al Ghul, but I kind of feel like all of the buildup in the first one just ends with this knife fight, and whatever was happening with the scientist and everything, it just kind of falls away.
That's exactly why I was saying that I was very confused, because, you know, because at first I was confused. I was like, okay, I was reading it as it's gonna get explained. Then I got to the last one. I'm like, well, none of that got explained. What happened? Also, second time he left a lady, even though she's like not on the up and up about the law, but it's like, don't worry, I'm gonna leave you.
He's a incredibly just like mentally just stunted man child in this, where he's just like, I'll kiss you and I gotta go. Like, although that's fleshed out more later. I mean,
compared
this book is
to
just
some dialogue from a Robin backup in one of these, which was he has to fight some women cultists, and he says, I'm gonna hit them because I'm a chauvinist but not a pig.
All right, Robin. Draw the line, buddy.
Comics is amazing.
Hold up. It's not like, I mean, I know
there's no way to parse it. There's no way. It doesn't.
Fariha, you are staring into madness right now, trying to make sense of it, and I don't feel like it's going to go well for you.
I've been doing this since we started doing Epic X-Men rereads.
Oh,
so
man.
Don't worry.
Yeah, comics just.
I'm going to take some time and read all of these, because this was a blast. This was even more fun than the last episode, where this is the right level of bonkers and like
Godspeed.
exciting and funny. And like I want more comics where Batman's talking trash, beating up people, because that totally reframes this character into a much just more absurd way.
Isn't like bids are being collected in omnibus now?
No, I mean,
or
because
not
these
yet?
are these are I think I'm not big on like pre-crisis DC collections, but a lot of this stuff is not digital. I'll say that because I like hunted to try to get some of these issues, and some of the in-between ones are good. There's one where he has to borrow Santa's sleigh. There's one where he fights a guy with a Reaper's scythe who's chasing after a Nazi whose other people are chasing after because the Nazi hid some gold. I mean, the in-between, and these sound like just like ridiculous and campy, but they're like amazing and campy. So I went from not giving a shit at all about Batman to being like, I might actually buy a Bronze Age omnibus if it collected everything sequentially.
Yeah, I absolutely
it's good. It's really good.
Eventually they will do it because they're on their way to finishing up with the Golden Age. So
I hope everyone watching this has read these, or please read these, because these are genuinely like a great time. This is comics.
You can get these stories though. All you have to do is get Tales of the Demon. It is available digitally. It doesn't have all these Robin backstuff and stuff. That's because I'm a crazy person. Note my backdrop here. But you can get all this and just read along with us. That's where we're going to hit pause on this discussion. We're not actually through all of Batman Tales of the Demon. There are 4 more stories in it. The next one, tantalizingly, is called I Now Pronounce You Batman and Wife. But we're not reading it. Wait, you have to have one more pre-Morrison episode because we're also going to read the Demon trilogy of, I always get the names in the wrong order. There's Son of the Demon, Bride of the Demon, and then Birth of the Demon in that order. Seems like maybe Birth should come before Bride, or even, I don't know. But we'll talk about why. So, and then after that, we are going to dive into Morrison. So if you want to follow along with these reads, we're going to read the rest of Tales of the Demon, and then we're going to get into the Demon trilogy, all widely available on digital.
Hoopla.
Yeah, Hoopla too. Get them
DC
from your
Unlimited.
library. DC Unlimited. These are widely available comic books, just the in-between ones that are not. So clearly we are loving some 70s comic books. Harry and I have already professed our deep love, but Fariha, having been forced now by me to read both 70s X-Men and 70s Batman, what would you go back and willingly reread? Batman or X-Men?
Wow.
Batman.
Yeah.
Wow. Like, yeah, right? Like, I say that, like, with, like, I never thought I would say that, but yeah, there's a reason why DC is considered to be something. Like, I don't necessarily like their characters a lot, but, yeah, they're actually kicking ass in terms of stories.
Yeah. Well,
it's so much fun.
It is just so much fun, really. If you're shy, and the other thing is they're not overwritten. Like I think a lot of 70s comics have so many caption boxes and so much narration. Yeah. That's just not really Denny O'Neil's style. It doesn't really.
So me. I used to think all this time that this is a 70s writer thing, but now I'm beginning to think it's a particular writer's thing. That all of that caption boxes and all of that excessive word is not necessarily the era thing. It was a particular choice by one writer.
Well, it's a lot of Marvel writers. A lot of Marvel from the 70s. Let's not just pin this on Big Daddy.
Oh, okay. So, in that case,
I don't know, because this is the first 70s DC I've ever read. Okay, that's it for our discussion this episode. On behalf of myself, of Fariha, and of Harry, we're so happy that you're joining us for this Crushing Comics Book Club. And after one more episode of getting in the zone of Batman, we will be on to reading the beginning of Morrison. So stick around, and we will see you again for our Batman Book Club.